All right, so in your groups, you were supposed to complete the 2 warm-up problems. Let's go ahead and look at our answers here. The first one that you wanted to solve for y, which means, again, I want to get y by itself. So down in my answer, I'm left with y equals. So the first thing I did was add 2x to both sides to move it away from the y. So 5y equals 12 plus 2x. But again, I don't want to know what 5y equals. I want to know what just y equals. So the last step is to go in and divide by the 5. So y equals 12 plus 2x divided by 5. The second one was to solve with the distributive property. Once you distribute, you have 8y plus 4 equals 2y minus 26. I subtracted 2y from both sides to get 6y plus 4 equals negative 26. Then I added 4 to both sides to get 6y equals negative 30. And then I divided both sides by 6 to get y equals negative 5. All right, so let's get started on today's notes. We're going to be looking at solving proportions. We're going to be looking at 2 different methods, and then you'll get to choose which method you prefer. The first one is going to be using the multiplication property of equality. This is a property that we've been using to solve equations in the last couple weeks. And basically the multiplication property of equality says you can multiply both sides of an equation by the same thing, or by the same value. Without changing the original value of the equation. Again, this is something we were doing. If we had x divided by 4 equal 10, we were multiplying both sides by 4 to get x equals 40. So again, that multiplication property of equality means we're multiplying both sides of an equation by the same thing. Because we're doing that, we're keeping that equation balanced, and we aren't changing the meaning of the problem. All right, so how this is going to work, we have these proportions, and a proportion is just 2 ratios that are equal to each other. So you see I have x over 7 equals 4 over 5. So one way that you can solve this is to multiply both sides by whatever's with the variable. So in this case, the variable is under the x. So when I multiply, though, I have to multiply by its reciprocal. Because if I just multiply by 7, I'm going to get x over 49. That's not going to change my problem. But if I multiply by 7 over 1 on both sides, so again, this is one of the 2 methods. We will look at another method, but part of your homework is going to ask you to use this specific method so that see that you understand. And what happens on the left, those 7s cancel out. So I have x equals 4 over 5 times 7 over 1. When we multiply fractions, again, remember we're just multiplying straight across. So 4 times 7 is 28. 5 times 1 is 5. I don't mind if you leave your answer like that because it can't be reduced. 5 doesn't go into 28. There's nothing that goes into both 5 and 28. But if you wanted to turn that into a decimal or a mixed number, I would accept that as well. I'm going to go ahead and leave my answer like that. But if you were to divide it out, what's that be? 3 3/5 or 3.6? I mean 5 3/5, excuse me, thank you. Alright, so the second one, m over 7 equals 3 over 5. It just happens to be a 7 again. It doesn't mean that that's always the case. So here I'm going to multiply both sides by 7 over 1. So the 7 cancels out there. So m equals 3 over 5 times 7 over 1. So m equals 21 over 5. And again, you can leave your answer like that, or in this case it would be 4 1/5 or 4.2. The only thing that would matter if you're doing a test and this was a multiple choice problem, obviously you would have to look at what format the answers are in. Okay, the third one, 3 over 16 equals x over 12. So this time, because it's a 12 under the x, I'm going to multiply both sides by 12. So x equals 12 over 1 times 3 over 16. X equals 36 over 16. Now, this can be reduced because there are numbers that go into both 36 and 16. What goes into both of them? 4. So x equals 9 over 4, or that would be 2 1/4 or 2.25. And again, this is just one method, and I do want the problems being done with this particular method at this time. All right. I have 2 problems for you to do in the group work. Stay on the front page there. We got a group work section there. One of them is a little tougher than the others. So here are the 2 problems that I want you to complete in the group work section. So get those written down and work them out in your group. All right, let's go ahead and look at the answers to these. Again, the second one's a little more challenging because you had your variable in the denominator. So the first one, multiply both sides by 6 over 1. So you get 24 over 5. And again, if you change that to 4 4/5 or 4.8. The second one, I told you, multiply by the x first to get it out of the denominator. So 5x over 9 equals 15. Then multiply both sides by 9 to get 5x equals 135. And then divide by 5 to get x equals 27. That one was a tougher problem. And it's because the denominator was in, the variable is in the denominator. There is a better method for solving that particular problem, and we will see that, but it can be done using your multiplication property of equality. So now, let's look at the other method for solving proportions. The other method that we have is the cross products property of a proportion. Cross products multiply diagonally across the equal sign. So we're going to take the numerator of the first ratio times the denominator of the second ratio and make that equal to the denominator of the first ratio times the numerator of the second ratio. We are going to end up cross multiplying. So if we look at that first one, y over 3 equals 3 over 5. So again, we're going to end up multiplying diagonally. So the y is going to multiply times the 5. The 3 is going to multiply times the 3. So 5 times y equals 3 times 3. So I get 5y equals 9. And then I divide both sides by 5. So again, you could leave this as 9/5. That can't be reduced. If you want to change it to a mixed number, that would be 1 4/5. Or 1.8, depending on how you're leaving it. I would accept any of those answers. The next one, again, we're going to cross multiply here. So I have 4 times m equals negative 3 times 22. So when I simplify, I have 4m equals negative 66. I'm going to come in here and use my division property of equality and divide both sides by 4. So m equals negative 66 over 4. Now 4 doesn't go in evenly to 66, but I can reduce. 2 goes into both of them. So m equals negative 33 halves. And again, you can leave your answer like that. Or you could change it to negative 16.5 or negative 16.5. I would accept all of those. As long as you reduce. You do have to reduce on this one. One more we're going to do together. Again, we're going to cross multiply. So I have 2 times t equals negative 5 times 6. So 2t equals negative 30. We're going to divide both sides by 2 to get that t equals negative 15. So it is possible you could get a whole number. We've gotten a lot of fractions today, but you could get either one. Okay, I'm going to put up 2 problems for you and your group to complete in the group work portion, and I'll pause while you guys do that. Okay, here's the 2 problems for you guys to complete. P over 4 equals 7 over 8, and 3 over 10 equals B over 7. All right, let's go ahead and look at the answers to these 2. So again, using our cross products property, you end up with 8 times P and 4 times 7, so 8P equals 28. So P is 28 over 8, but that reduces. So either you have 7 halves, 3.5, or 3.5, either way, but you cannot leave 28 over 8 because that can reduce. The second one, 3 over 10 equals B over 7, so 10 times B equals 3 times 7. 10B equals 21, so B equals 21 over 10, or you could put 2 and 1/10 or 2.1. Any of those are acceptable. Now, most people prefer the cross products property. I'll be honest, when I solve proportions, I go to the cross products property. I just find, especially when we get into this next set of problems that are going to get a little bit more involved, I just find it's a little cleaner than trying to do the multiplication property of equality. On the simple ones, not so bad, but on the more advanced ones, it is tougher. So now let's look at a set of problems. And it says we can solve using any method. I'm going to stick with my cross product property here. N over 5 equals 2n plus 4 over 6. So again, I'm going to cross multiply. The key here is I have 5 times the quantity 2n plus 4. You need to make sure if you have an expression that you put it in parentheses, because it's not just 5 times 2n and then add the 4. It's 5 times the quantity 2n plus 4. And that's going to equal 6 times n. So on the left there, I'm going to need to distribute. So 10n plus 20 equals 6n. Now, I've talked about how I always move my variable to the left, and I'm going to continue to do that to show you, because there's a mistake that gets made on a problem like this, and I want to make sure we don't make that. So I subtract 6n from both sides so I can get my variable. When I go to write my next line, 4n plus 20 equals 0. If I subtract everything away from one side, that means I have 0 or nothing left. So you need to make sure you account for that. Could you have moved your variable to the right? Absolutely. That's a choice that you can do. But if you move it to the left and everything disappears, you have to make sure and account for that 0. And then I'm going to subtract 20 from both sides, because again, my goal here is to get the variable by itself. So 4n equals negative 20. Divide both sides by 4. N equals negative 5. These are more work. Once we do the cross products property, now we basically have multi-step equations with variables on both sides. Next one, cross multiply. So I have 7 times q plus 2 equals, I'm going to reverse that so I can get the larger one. 5 times 2q minus 11 equals 7 times q plus 2. Now I have distributing on both sides in this problem. So I need to make sure that I do that. So I have 5 times 2q plus 5 times negative 11 equals 7 times q plus 7 times 2. So 10q minus 55 equals 7Q plus 14. I'm going to subtract 7Q from both sides. So 3Q minus 55 equals 14. Add 55 to both sides. And 3Q equals 69. Divide both sides by 3. So Q equals 23. Shh. All right, one last one we're going to do together here. C plus 1 over C minus 2 equals 4 over 7. Again, I'm going to cross multiply. So 7 times C plus 1 equals 4 times C minus 2. I'm going to end up with distribution on both sides again. So 7 times C plus 7 times 1 equals 4 times C plus 4 times negative 2. So 7C plus 7 equals 4C minus 8. And at this point, I've just simply done my cross products and distributed. Now I need to work on solving, which means I need my variable all on one side. So I'm going to subtract 4C from both sides. So 3C plus 7 equals negative 8. I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides. So 3C equals negative 15. Divide both sides by 3. So C equals negative 5. I'm going to put up two problems here for you to put in the group work section of your notes there, and you to work with your group on. All right, here are the two problems I want you to do in your group right now. All right, let's look at the answers to these two. For W plus 3 over 4 equals W over 2. So again, you have to distribute only on the left side, ending up with 2W plus 6 equals 4W. When you're done solving, you end up with W equals 3. The second one, again, cross multiply, and you end up with X equals 5.